Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Roberta McIntyre, and I am the President and CEO of FireSafe Sonoma. And this is FireSafe Sonoma's monthly program. We call it our speaker series. We try to land this the third Thursday of each month from 2 to 3. Now, with that said, this one might be going a little long. So if it does, and you're looking at this on YouTube, you might see a couple of one or two other companion clips that go with this overall presentation. So yeah, thanks for joining us. And again, Roberta McIntyre, FireSafe Sonoma. We're the countywide FireSafe Council for Sonoma County. And in helping me out today is Marika Ramson. She's our executive coordinator, county coordinator with FireSafe Sonoma. And also helping us out is Mason. He is a Grizzly Corps fellow that we have for about another month or so. And Mason's been really helpful. He's our tech helper with this kind of stuff as well. With that said, I want to remind folks that last month on the program, we had Brock Dolman of the Occidental Arts and Ecology Center. And he gave us a presentation called, ready for it? Fields to Flow. Slash ain't trash, it's beneficial biomass. And that presentation was all about the great work they do at the 80-acre OAEC property. If you missed it, it was a great one. Check it out, it's on our YouTube channel. And then next month, we're gonna have Merlin Schlumberger of the Merlin Arborist Group on the program. He's gonna talk about what an arborist does and give helpful landscaping tips from the point of view of an arborist. I ran into him probably 2 or 3 weeks ago when I was tabling at a safety fair out in Oakmont, and I started talking to him, and I'm like, what does the arborist do? And that wasn't the best question to ask is, man, did I get an earful? They do this and that. They do way more than I ever imagined. I thought they just trimmed trees. Lo and behold. And we do use arborists from time to time for our vegetation treatment plans and actual on the ground field treatments to identify, healthy or not healthy trees, or if we're looking at trees to remove or cut, oftentimes we'll use an arborist for that. So yeah, so I'm looking forward to seeing Merlin next month. And then lo and behold, guess we have this month. This month we have Caerleon Safford on the program. She's currently with Permit Sonoma. And I want to let you guys know, if you don't already, Caerleon, she is actually one of the founding members of FireSafe Sonoma. And I did not mention it yet, but FireSafe Sonoma, we've been around for 26 years now. So we've been, teaching people about wildland fire safety and risk reduction before it was even popular. So Caerleon, it's great to have you on tonight. And Caerleon's going to talk to us about the updated Sonoma County Wildfire Protection Plan, as well as Permit Sonoma's project portal, which is especially useful for communities interested in FireWise. A lot of good tools there that we do use when we bring folks into the FireWise realm. And then also, if you didn't know, Permit Sonoma is Sonoma County's consolidated land use planning and development permitting agency. Yeah, Caerleon, I'm just going to hand it off to you because I've already talked too much and everyone knows I can talk a lot. So Caerleon, take it.
And that definitely makes two of us, Roberta. We both talk a lot. Whoa, except for, wait a minute, I got to make that share thing happen first. Hold on. Share that screen, share. We got it. Hi, everybody. Thank you for inviting me today to talk about what we're doing over there at Permit Sonoma and about the Community Wildfire Protection Plan, which is an important document, which we will be talking about. But really what I want to talk about is what we're doing over there and how we can work together, because this is an increasingly important part of my world, I find, is figuring out how we can more successfully collaborate with the folks out there in the community. I'm starting by just, like wildfire. So back in the days when I started working in Sonoma, with FireSafe Sonoma, it was in this period of time. Started in the early 2000s, and these numbers were pretty consistent from when I started in 2003 or whenever it was. We really hadn't had much loss, and what that meant is that throughout most of my career, really everybody's relationship to wildfire was kind of, well, it was sort of hypothetical, right? And the magnitude of risk was largely underestimated by many Sonoma County residents. And overnight, all of this changed when in 2017, everything started catching on fire. And it sort of hasn't stopped since, although we've had ups and downs. But our world has completely changed. And, I can't underestimate the cost of these fires, not only the financial costs, but even more so the emotional costs, which are absolutely incalculable. And for any of you out there who were affected by the fires, thank you for being here. I know it's hard. We've really made a lot of progress since all this changed in our world, though. Emergency alert notification, FireSafe Sonoma itself is a so much more robust agency than it was when I started. We've really done a ton, but we have a really long way to go. Adapting to a fire-prone world, it can't be seen as a sprint. It's a marathon. And, we built all of these communities that we lived in based on the concept that wildfire was a rare event that didn't really pose much of a threat, right? It's all good. And that was especially true in the urban areas. But as we built, things were changing around us. Wildland vegetation changed as it wasn't managed or grazed or burned. The climate changed. But all of our buildings, at least the ones we haven't burned down yet, reflect the building practices, locations developed before fire was a constant presence, which is to say they're really vulnerable to wildfire. And getting the whole county, and truthfully, if you think about it, the whole world, sort of to create homes and landscapes that are more resilient to wildfire, it's an epic undertaking. It includes really deep changes to our human perception of risk and how we respond to risk. Here's what we do know, right? It's gonna take a really long time. And it's gonna cost a whole lot of money to get it done, right? This is all true, but the upside of having a bunch of disasters, one of them, is that we did get some of that money. Through most of my early years with FireSafe Sonoma, it was really hard to get even very small grants here because it was hard to compete with, Los Angeles County, who just lost a whole bunch of acres in fires. And we were going, well, we had one in 1978. It was really scary. And that was sort of what it was like in grant world. And we did get some grants, but there wasn't a lot of money on the ground. As soon as we had federal disaster declarations, the money tapped open. And since we'd been so many of us, Roberta and so many of us had been sitting around going, oh, if we only had enough money, we would do this and this and this. We were kind of ready with my county hat when the tapped open to start writing a bunch of grants, and we did. When I started writing those grants, my agency was Sonoma County Fire and Emergency Services. In the middle of all of this grant stuff, we morphed over into Permit Sonoma, and I am now part of a division of Permit Sonoma, which, as Roberta mentioned, is the land use planning and development and permitting agency for the county. Probably not the most popular agency in the county, which does become a player in my story as I go on. But the upside of being a part of an organization like Permit Sonoma is that I have on tap a whole lot of resources that I wouldn't have had otherwise. We have our fire prevention and natural resources divisions who are primary in all of our grant projects, along with our communications division staff, but we also have geographic information systems folks. We have people who know about building regulations, and we have this wide variety of people that we work with through this process. At the end of the day, to reduce risk in our communities, we really have two tools. We can work towards making homes and communities more resilient to wildfire through defensible space and structured hardening. That's sort of the inside out, the home out perspective. Or we can work towards reducing wildland fuels, thus wildfire intensity, and hopefully spread into abutting communities by working in wildland fuels reductions near communities. In an ideal world, we should do both of these two things simultaneously. And this is sort of the goal we've been working towards at Permit Sonoma, and I think we're there. I'll be briefly describing a couple of the projects that we have in place and kind of describe that progression. But just so you have an idea, how busy we've been, I want to show you all of the projects that we have in place right now. WildfireAdapted is it's two separate FEMA grants, which are both phased projects, which address 14 communities across the county. We'll be talking more about that. The Hazardous Fuels Project is a wildland fuels component project, which we have these large areas mapped, and we're doing about 1,000 acres of treatment within those areas, hopefully. And then the big one is the Building Resilient Infrastructures, or BRIC grant, which we have going, which has 3 areas, but a lot of treatment in those areas. So that's what we got going. Altogether, we've really hit a pretty large part of the county so far. So we have a lot of funding on the ground to help in a lot of the areas that are the most vulnerable. But one of the first things that we wanted to talk about today was the Sonoma County Community Wildfire Protection Plan, which was also one of my projects on the side, along with all those other things. Which, in the big news is, dun, 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 it's done, it's signed as of this month still. It is an official deal. We have a completed Sonoma County CWPP. This is a very exciting event. Happy it's done. For any of you who don't know, a CWPP exists to bring residents, agencies, organizations together to collaboratively identify values, issues and risks, and prioritize areas and strategies to reduce risk. This was defined by Congress in the 2003 Healthy Forest Restoration Act to have a consistent platform to do this across the country. So we have the CWPP done. We're really excited about it. It's basically a 2-part deal. We have the document itself, which is on the left side of your screen, and that can be viewed on our website. But the active part is the right part, which is the hub site and project entry portal. We really hope that this will massively change over time and evolve in order to really serve the needs of the county. I'll be talking a little bit about some of the elements in there. Definitely, when you're in there, go check out the Wildfire Risk Index. That's a pretty interesting tool. The project planning tool is a great place to do that, and I'll be showing you that. And most importantly, the project entry portal. We'll be talking a lot about that. So now I am going to minimize this screen real quick so that I can actually walk you through the hub site. So if you go to the hub site, this is the landing page of the hub site. There is a lot of information on here that you can go through and check out. We're more than happy to get events and stuff up here. If you send us community events or whatever, we'll put them up. The parts we'll be talking about today, though, are the project entry portal and the project planning tool. I'm going to start with the project planning tool because any of you out there who are doing projects, this is the most awesome resource. So if you click on that button, it's going to take you to a screen that looks like this, right? And it's got, these are from 2021 projects. We're about to pull these off hopefully soon. So one of the first things you need to know about is the layer list. So if you click on that, you can then take those off so that you don't have to look at all those buttons. Communities at risk, handy for grants, don't really need it now. Same with supervisory districts. So now we're down to a more basic map plan here. And what I want to show you is how you can draw a project and get a bunch of data about that project for any grant applications that you're working on. But where am I? Am I in Sonoma County? Oh, this thing, I had it all set up and now it's, okay. For anybody who doesn't know, this is the San Andreas Fault. Okay. Here we go. Why are none of my layers showing?
Caerleon, I think if you click on the home screen button below the plus and minus, it might center you.
I think it might be that I didn't have the public parcels in there. Let's try that.
Okay.
Nope. You know, I've been having some internet issues today. Well, I'm just gonna pop up until because my parcels aren't showing up, and I actually had them preloaded on here. So I don't know why those parcels aren't showing in here. Let's try going backwards. Maybe I have too much open. Let's try that. Well, this is really annoying because I tried this and it worked fine right before we got online. Technology is our friend. Let's try turning that off. Darn it. Okay, well, when in doubt, I had a project area all picked out. But at any rate, what you're going to do is hopefully it'll work better than this. And I've never seen this before. So this is not the normal bad behavior. I think it has to do with, could be my internet.
Yeah, it looks like it's behaving slowly.
It is. I think it's my internet. So what you can do is you pop on this little exclamation point over here in the corner. It's small and weird looking, but that is it. And this is going to open up this menu on the bottom, which is where all your drawing tools are. You can then go down there and choose a couple of different things. I like the polygon tool. So you can click on that, and then you can just start to make a polygon of whatever size and shape you want. And it is being slow and cranky. Double click it and it'll pull up that area. Now let's try to get the public parcels in. Huh. It's not showing the parcel layer.
I wonder.
Very, very odd.
Yeah, it's just slow.
It's down here. It's just slow. So once you do that, and if you can find an area that actually has buildings in it, which this does, and I will show you that. Once you define that area, and you can make this as fine as you want, you can follow parcel lines because they will show up on here if you're lucky. But you can look at the wildfire risk index score for this area. You can look at the CAL FIRE fire hazard severity. This is the 2007 version. This will be updated when the fire hazard severity zone updating gets updated. If we had local responsibility area in here, we could see any fire hazard severity zones in there, but we don't. It also gives you population statistics. So how many people are in this area, percentage of elders, percentage of Hispanic. But this is where a lot of the real joy of this is for you guys. This shows all of the different parcels that are in this project area or grabbed by this project area. And the real thing to look for here is over here in this corner. We have this little cloud thing. And if you just click on that little cloud thing, it's going to give you CSVs that have all of the parcel data in CSV format. So you get the, with any luck at all, you get the open file. This is definitely my computer. So my apologies, everybody. Yeah.
Would it help, Caerleon, if I open it up and you walk me through it?
I've got all my, at any rate, what you're going to want to do
is,
yeah, there's the, you're going to open your download file. I can't even get this to open for some reason. I don't know why. But what this will provide you is a whole list of all the parcels. All it doesn't have in it is the owner's name. That's a privacy issue, but it has the mailing address, the zoning, the number of acres, the number of structures. It's pretty awesome tool, and you can get data for any one of these things by clicking on the little arrow button. So for project planning, this thing is awesome. So definitely go, when you go into the hub site, go to the project planning tool. You can draw it out, you can erase it, you can redraw it, and you can adjust your parcel to your boundaries for a project to really do what you need. I use it all the time myself, just used it last night. So there we go. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about is the project entry portal. This is where we really hope that all of you out there who are creating new projects are going to enter data about them and map them to this central location so that we know where people want or have projects in place throughout the county. So that's what the project entry portal is all about. It's a really important thing in this county because we don't talk to each other super well. So the project entry portal, you click on that and it'll take you to the primary page, which is here. Lots of information about what comes next, which is basically a survey in GIS. So you can read about it here and it'll help you figure out what to do. And then you'll pop open the red button there, and that'll take you to this survey. And I have pre-filled this so that you can go through it, which is a really good tip, by the way. If you want to go back and edit it, you can do it. You just can't submit. You can't go forward or backwards until you put stuff in. But if you want to go through it, just enter gobbledygook in, just don't submit at the end. So I am filling this out. There are two surveys in here. There's a short survey, which is pretty basic project information, and the long survey, which if you have a relatively well-developed project, you should use the long survey. So pop open that long survey button, then you're going to hit next, and it's just a series of questions. We did use this for the Ag and Open Space Vegetation Management Grant Program this year. Most of the folks who came back to us said it took them less than a half an hour to fill in. So it's not that terrible. So you're going to fill out basic information about your group. Are you an informal group with no taxpayer ID? Do you have a taxpayer ID? Are you the government? Who are you? That's just for us to know. The primary contact for the agency, email for the agency, who's submitting the project so that we can ask you questions if we need to. Have you collaborated with other groups and agencies in the design of this project? So we're going to want you to enter the agency name and an email for the contact there. That's important to know for project planning. What's the title of your project? And this is where the fun stuff is. We're trying to figure out kind of what types of projects they have. And so this is a bunch of drop downs here. And there's a bunch of different treatment types in the long form that are associated with those treatments. In the short form, you don't have to talk about the treatment types because we're assuming you don't really know. But if you have a project well planned, you probably know how you're going to treat them. So if you say yes to defensible space, you've got this drop down, you say yes or no. If you say yes, this window will open, which is going to ask you, okay, well, what are the treatment types you're using? I'm using hand trews and prescribed grazing. And you'll go there. And then are you doing roadside fuels treatment? And again, if you say yes, you're going to get the menu that's going to say, oh, well, I'm using mechanical because I'm going to masticate and I'm going to use hand crews. And if you were grazing, you could do that. So you're just going to click as many boxes as you're going to, the treatment types you're going to use. There's no wildland fuels treatment in this project. So there's no treatment methodology here. But if I click that, again, we're going to end up with those menus. And they change slightly. Hardening structures, for example, this is a really simple one. If you say yes, it's just like, are you going to harden structures? Yes or no? Are you going to modify them for existing? So and critical infrastructure, the questions are slightly different. Are you going to modify existing structures, defensible space, or rebuild or create new? So you're going to go down and just fill all these in as you go. Project description is 1,000 characters. This is what 1,000 characters looks like. So it's 2 paragraphs. So you just want as tight a description of your project as you can get. And because I know people always want to talk about need, I gave them their own space to talk about why this is so important for your community. So that's 500 characters. You have a couple of choices for project cost, which are, is it no cost, low cost, or very high, over $1 million? And you'll just pick that off, and we know that that's not going to be a given. And this I put in here partly because this is so important, project maintenance, right? We've got to learn to circle this up moving forward. And there's not a lot of great solutions about how to do that. So I put this in here partly to say, oh, that's a good idea, so that we can see what people are doing out there, so that we can help pass that information around, so that other people think, oh, I might be able to make that, do the maintenance that way as well. So that's why that is in there. So if you've got any ideas, stick them in there. No one's going to hold you to any of this. So this is the part that intimidates people the most. It's not really that hard, which is the mapping. We have to have you map your project. If you have multiple projects and you have shape files, please let us know, because we can map the project with the shape file. And then you can just generate the information to the survey. That's actually probably a better solution, because yeah, look at this, Roberta, my map's not even there. Wow, odd.
Because yeah, it's not loading fast enough.
It is just, yeah, this is not the day to do this. Normally you would see a map here. The process is pretty much the same. You're going to use the same sort of mapping tools to map your project. This button is important because that makes your map normally to full screen, so you can actually look at it and do it. Then you're just going to use the polygon tool to draw it. Once you've done that, you can move forward. So I do have one in there, so I can move forward. Public lands are identified on that map in blue. It's really important that you pay attention to if you're in any blue areas, because I'm going to ask you, we're also going to get public land information back from the GIS side. So we'll know if you're impacting public lands. But if you've impacted public lands, it's really important that you've worked with the land management agency to talk about the project that you're proposing. So we're going to ask for their contact information if you have that. Permissions to do work is one of the most challenging parts of doing any grant program, as any of you have done, any have known. So we really would like to know if you've started doing the ownership outreach. And if you say yes, you'll get the menu that says, what have you, how much have you done? So if you're really good, you've done 76 to 99%. But if you've not really started yet, you can go down to the lower bracket. That's a really good indicator of how far along you are with your process. These are the priorities that are identified in the actual CWPP document in chapter 7-6, how soon we forget, which were identified collaboratively throughout our collaborative input process. And this is not a ranking score. These projects aren't ranked in any way. So if you have 16 boxes that you've checked in here, it doesn't make your project stronger in any way. It just indicates that you're doing a lot of different stuff. We did used to rank on this, and we found that people were saying yes just to get a higher ranking, which made difficult projects. And so we want to know if you're doing what the CWPP says. You do have to hit at least one of these to be listed in the CWPP, but that's all you got to have is one of them. So don't try to do more than your project can do or your group can do in order to sound like you're doing more. Tell us what you're doing, and that's all you got to do. So that's it. And then please do fill out the survey and be very frank. If you found it annoying and difficult, I would really like to know specifically how, so we can change it. So that is the brief tour through the hub site. Let me say a word or two about why this is so important, and then we can pause for questions should there be any. We have a lot of folks in the space right now in Sonoma County who are doing all kinds of work in wildlands with outreach and education and all kinds of stuff. So it's really important that everybody knows what everybody else is doing. And so having one space where all of these projects are in one map is going to be super helpful moving forward, both to identify trends and gaps. Are there areas of very high risk with no projects? And conversely, is there an area over here where we have 10 projects with 10 different people, which would be a great single project, right? So how can we combine? How can we pull them apart? How can we get people together? How many large scale vegetation projects versus defensible space and structural hardening projects are there? What's the blend that we're seeing? we really want to know where your COPE, FireWise, Fire Safe Council groups are too. So if we don't have you listed on the map, please make sure and let us know. Our access and functional needs or disadvantaged communities adequately represented. All of this is in the end goal is to provide increase local and regional governments' capacity to build and maintain a pipeline of forest health and fire prevention projects, which is what the California Wildfire and Forest Resilient Action Plan and the task force is really suggesting that we do, so that we have a really good idea of what's going on, so that when money comes available, you have projects to plug into funds. So I'm really hoping it's going to encourage collaboration, provide for technical assistance when we see projects that really need a little bit of help to make a good project a great project. So that is what where we're hoping to go with this moving forward. So should we pause for questions? Are there any?
There's no questions in the chat currently. So if you want to hit the next block, that's fine. We're at 2:36 now, so yeah, I would say,
Okay.
yeah, let's hit the next block and then we'll talk about it. And I have some things I want to add.
Okay. And now we're in the speed dating part of the presentation. Now's when I'm going to start talking really, really fast to get through all these ridiculous slides I put together. So again, all of our grant programs are really looking at this model. Home in, wildlands, wildlands in, right? So how are we modifying the wildlands to protect communities, and how are we modifying the built environment to protect itself? So this is where we've been going. SoCo Adapts is the first of our projects that we got funded through the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. And this is absolutely it is a house out program. It only addresses defensible space and structure hardening on the ground. How it works is we're in phase 1 right now. We're beginning to wrap up phase 1, hopefully. And the first thing I'm going to say this like 19 times, because we have found one of the biggest barriers that we've had on this project, is that this is not a code compliance program. We're not going out and doing assessments and then throwing violations and fees and fines, and we're going to come and get you for either the defensible space side or the structure hardening side. We designed this specifically as a carrot program, not a stick program. But because we're Permit Sonoma, we're having a hard time getting people to believe that we're not going to come after them with fines and violations for anything that we see in Wildfire Adapted assessments. So I have this in here like 5 times because I'm really trying to figure out how we can get people to believe us when we say that we're not passing this assessment information into code compliance's realm. We've completed about 6,500 defensible space assessments. I think we have a couple hundred left. Where we're lagging is in the structure hardening because it's opt-in and folks aren't signing up. And I'll be talking a lot more about that in a minute. What we're doing also in phase 1, which has been enormously interesting, is the environmental compliance, or that should say environmental review, not compliance. It turns out this is a really complicated thing when you have federal funds, because it's really important that if you're spending federal funds, you're not doing any harm to anything on the landscape: animals, plants, archaeology, historic structures. And so the requirements to get through the environmental review are pretty stringent, and FEMA is being pretty particular with how we're doing that. So what we've done is we've created this the image you see here. We've created this GIS tool, which has integrated all of the indices that they want us to use to look at, are there threatened and endangered plants, animals, or whatever in this area, draws buffers around them. It also includes houses, because, and this makes me feel super old, any house built over past 1978 is an historic resource. Does that make me an historic resource? I guess I am. But so this is one of the things that we've created to help us through this next step of this. What we're doing is we're creating baseline EnviroScreens for every parcel of the 6,500 parcels in the area, so that we'll then pass them on to FEMA to get sort of 2 buckets of projects, which are, these have issues that we'll need to figure out how to mitigate. And these are no issue parcels. And then in phase 2, when we start doing the actual rebate piece, we'll have to relook at each of those parcels on an individual scale. So this is an important part of the process, and has been, I'm happy to have a really awesome team through our Natural Resources Division to walk us through that. The next thing that we're doing is we're just about to launch our rebate interest survey. And what we're hoping to do is establish a list of folks who have gotten their assessments and been paying attention, who are interested in participating in the rebate program. So that will be coming out soon. That interest survey, it'll be similar to the one on the CWPP, fairly quick, fairly easy to do. And we're really hoping we get some good responses from that, so we have more specific data to move to FEMA on the environmental side before phase 2 starts. Phase 2 should start sometime in 2024. We really hope it does anyway. That's going to depend on when we get done with our environmental review. But environmental review, and this is where the implementation part comes, which is where we can provide rebates to property owners for doing defensible space and structure hardening work. We were breaking these up into 2 different amounts in each area. We decided that that's silly. There's just this overall rebate amount that's available, and you can spend it however you need to in both categories. If we have places where there's 29 dead sudden oak death trees on the parcel, they're going to need more than $3,700 to abate that. So that's now how it's working, is that it's a single amount that will be your rebate. There's a 25% property owner cost share. So that is part of that. If you want to do structure hardening assessment rebates, which could could include 0 to 5 foot non-combustible zone. It could include vents. It could include modifications to deck. If you need a new roof, you could apply that $10,000 to your new roof or to the match amount. But if you want to do those structure hardening rebate program, you must have a structure hardening assessment from our folks to do that. And I'm going to walk you through how to sign up for that and the basics of what that is at. Most of this information is on our SoCoAdapt's webpage. Really great if you sign up for email updates. That's where we'll be pretty much notifying people. We're sending postcards and letters and all kinds of stuff, but the email is the most efficient way for us to get noticing out. But we don't have your email unless you give it to us. So we'll be posting information as the surveys open and things like that. So please do sign up for email updates. If you have any questions, please email us. There's our email address, which I think Mason's posting around as well, and a phone number. But absolutely, please sign up for your awesome free home assessment, because they are awesome. These guys are hitting it out of the park. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that now. To sign up for those, you're going to go onto our interactive project map, which is on the website. You'll hit the button for it right down below this part of the screen. Just go down and get it, or use this QR code. Once you're on there, you can look up your parcel either by searching here. We're just loading another search engine for this too, to make it even easier. Or you can pop on your parcel itself. If you can find it, you can pop on it. And once you get to your parcel, what's going to open it up is this. One of the things that'll open up is this is the scheduling tool to schedule your structure assessment with Madronas Wildfire Defense, who is our contractor who is doing our structure hardening assessments. They've just done an awesome job. I can't tell you how impressed I am with their professionalism and knowledge. They're really doing a great job. That assessment is really going to look at the whole house. not the defensible space, but all of the elements on the structure itself, including the 0 to 5 foot non-combustible zone. So it's very, very comprehensive, really easy to sign up for it. It's a 15-minute phone call, and then you'll get them. They'll come out, they'll give you a really great, very detailed treatment report that has prioritized treatment options, which you can then kind of look through and either figure out what to do on your own or what you can do for which you might have a rebate should you be lucky enough to be in one of the project areas. You can contact Madronas directly if you have any questions, but it's best to go through the website for now and just get scheduled for that. Can't say enough how much we need people to sign up for these. Here are the project areas. So if you live or have your fire safe council in one of these areas, please help us to pass the word on. Again, not part of a code compliance. Let me say that in another language. This is not part of a code compliance. Really, it's not. We're not throwing you under the bus. We're trying to reduce risk in our communities. That's what we're doing with this project. So we need folks to sign up to do that. Okay, another break for questions.
We are at almost 3:15.
Okay.
So there was a couple questions there are a couple questions in the chat. I'd like to hit those before we go too much farther, if you're okay with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so a question was asked earlier when you were covering the CWPP project entry portal.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a two-part question. One is confirming that you only had to check one box for, the type of project to be to get into the system. And the other part of that was,
Oops.
Is there an approval process?
We are vetting for very basic stuff. All we're going to be looking for on your projects is, do you have yes in one of these 12 boxes? That's all it takes, is one. So do you have one in there? Does it look reasonable? Or have you written a project that's, well, what we're doing is we're knitting purple sweaters for deer. That one's not going to get in the CWPP list. The other thing that we're looking for is if your project impacts public lands, we will be following up with the public land manager to make sure that they know about that project and they approve of that project. That was a problem we had in the first round of the project entry portal, is there were giant projects put in parks land, but no one had talked to the parks about it. And that's was not a good thing. And so that we've circled that up. So we will be following up with the public landowner in question. And those are the only screening criteria at this point. We're really hoping that eventually we'll come up with a collaborative ranking system, which is acceptable to everybody out there. But right now, put your project in. If it meets those two criteria, it will get listed in the CWPP.
And then a couple other questions related to the material you just covered.
Mm-hmm.
So with regard to the SoCo adapts, given that it doesn't cover the entire county, there's kind of a patchwork of areas that were targeted for specific reason. And the question is, in phase 2, when will West Sonoma County be included, specifically Cazadero? I know there are some pretty good chunks of West County in the SoCo adapts map already in the geography, and I think Cazadero is a chunk of it, isn't it?
It is. There's a small piece of Cazadero, and it's actually our second project, and it's mostly in the sort of town area near the general store, and
yeah, right down the main Cazadero highway.
Yeah, that's where that's where we are now. We're really hoping that we'll be able to expand these projects over time, and especially as we really learn more clearly the best way to implement these projects. So here is the Cazadero project area. I can't remember how many parcels there are in there, but it's basically along the corridor there.
Yeah, the more densely the place-
Populated, yeah.
Yeah, densely populated or.
So when we
Higher
came up
dense
with these
construction.
project areas, we used a variety of matrices, and one of them was that we looked at where are areas where you have high or very high fire severity zoning and structure density in proximity. And that was one of our first cuts. And we also cut in for where do you have areas that have, and this was in 2017, remember, before we had a bunch of people like you working on the stuff you're doing now. Where do we have areas where there are existing very active fire safe councils and people doing work? And that was the Upper Mark West. Did not meet our structured density guidelines, but certainly met the this is a very engaged community guideline. And then our third cut was we got on the phone and we called the local fire chief and said, hey, chief, what keeps you up at night?
Yeah.
And that was the third cut for where some of these projects ended up. Many of them have burned since we wrote this grant, so I guess we were on the right track, right?
And then another question related to SoCo-DAPS is how many assessors are there and what level of training do they receive? It's Moderna's, right? You're contracting with Moderna's.
Madronas has, I think they have, I don't know exactly how many, it's probably about 7 personnel that they have out there. Their training was excellent. It was days of in class, and then they went out and worked together. So their level of training is really, really good. Our defensible space assessors, we've been training them beginning in the beginning of the season and moving them out together. As we move into the next phases of these things, I think one of the things that we're going to do differently is our assessors are now going to be going out and doing a very basic structure hardening screen along with the defensible space moving into the future, which is going to sort of change how people are looking at this. And I'm kind of excited about that. That will be a much more intensive training program moving forward.
Okay. All right. We have about 7 or 8 minutes left.
Okay, well, I have like, $50 million worth of grants. So
there you go.
to cover in 7-8 minutes, it's a miracle.
If we go a little over, that's fine. We typically start, a few minutes late by the time we go on.
I will try not to too much. I can kind of fly through these, and if people have questions, we can go back there. So that was the near home side. This is the landscape side. So we wrote another grant, which was entirely about hazardous fuels in the burned areas, pretty much, and areas that we knew were going to burn, which did burn after we wrote the grant. What this does is potential project types are shaded fuel breaks, ridgetop fuel breaks, and roadside fuels reduction. These cross-hatched areas are the areas where we looked for projects collaboratively along with the local fire officials, local groups that existed to figure out where we could put projects on the ground. We have a bunch of prospective projects, which I'll show you on the next slide. And noticing right of entry to get onto property, to do surveys, to move forward with environmental review are out and underway. They've been having a hard time getting positive responses back to the requests to come onto the property to survey for endangered species and so on. So if any of these are in any of your areas out there, please pop us an email and let us know if you can help get the word out that this could be a really highly beneficial project. We'll do the work to reduce the fuels on the roadsides. Mostly these are roadsides, but we can't do anything if we don't get the property permissions to come in and survey before we move forward. So here's where you can email the team who works on this. This is Courtney and Aldo are the primaries on that project, and that's on the natural resources side of the shop. The big one is the BRIC grant, as it is commonly called. Its real name is Wildfire Resilience Sonoma County. And what this is this is where we brought it together, right? This is where we've brought together the near home and the wildland to do one project to hopefully truly protect a discrete community. So what this is doing is we're simultaneously implementing mitigation strategies in both the built and the natural environment. So the wildland fires can occur without being human, economic, and environmental disasters. So this is where these things are all coming together. Strongly based on the National Cohesive Wildfire Management Strategy principles of fire adapted communities. So we'll be doing those assessments, rebates, just like in the Wildfire Adapted, for home hardening and defensible space. We'll be working with FireSafe Sonoma to foster FireWise, FireSafe councils, COPE groups, whatever, to form new ones in these areas where they're needed or foster the existing ones that are there. We'll be creating resilient landscapes to develop strategic fuels reduction and reduce fire intensity near communities. And all of this contributes to safe and effective wildfire response. So this will help firefighters respond to issues as they come. This is my favorite part of the project, is the best available science. We have a lot of money in there to contract with the best folks in the country to really look at, well, what else can we do? We know the obvious stuff. We know to harden homes and make fuel breaks, but what else is there? Is there more that we can do? Is there more that we can learn about how we reach out to motivate people to action? My big learning experience with the Wildfire Adapted has been that really the most important part of that project is the outreach, is the talking to folks, it's the communication. How do we best do that? So we're really starting to draw in the best folks in the country to really help us design that, so that ultimately we're going to end up with stuff that is going to help the whole county. These are three very distinct, these are the project areas for that grant. They're very, very different eco and built environments, right? This is redwood forest over here. This is urban and Mayacamas mixed oak wildland in the green areas, but very urban down here in the core. And then this is grasslands, right? So this goes up the slopes of Sonoma Mountain, but it's a largely grassland area. So what we'll end up with at the end of the day is a lot of recommendations about how to do treatments in three of the most common sort of land forms and structure type built environment forms in the county, and how it is going to work on the smaller level. This is the Lower Russian River project area. The blue is all the near home, and the yellow areas are where we're going to be looking for areas where we can put strategic fuel breaks, do roadside clearing, and things like that. So all of these things will be happening simultaneously. It's an enormous project. It's about $48 million total cost, with about it's a $47 million in the on the ground stuff, the assessment and the rebates and the wildland work, with about 1.5 million in grant administration costs. Phase one, just like the Wildfire Adapted, outreach and engagement, environmental review. Phase two is the implementation. So it's going to work in a very similar way. And we're in the very early stages of getting this moving. It just got passed off by the board in May. So we're starting right now. I'm starting outreach to the folks that I know who know an awful lot about how to engage communities and do that effectively. So we're moving forward. The other thing, last slide, don't forget the chipper program. It's open. You guys probably all know about that. We have the chipper, and the chipper dashboard is up. So please sign up for the chipper. It's a great free service in the county. And that's it.
All right, great, thanks. Excellent. Let's see, where'd the chat go? There it is. I don't see any outstanding questions in the chat. But I did want to mention that we use the hub site a lot for the FireWise communities that are growing in various areas throughout the county. What we're able to do is, once they identify their geography or the footprint they want to have their FireWise community in, then we just draw that polygon. We work with them to draw that polygon. And then what we end up with is a list of mailing addresses. We got the number of homes in the area, so much data that is all part of the FireWise application. So it helps a lot. And we've discovered over the years doing this now for about 2 years now, that in a lot of Sonoma County, the best way to get a hold of people is still direct mail. And so having those mailing addresses to make that initial point of contact or initial contact is key. So that's something we've learned as well. So that hub site has been really helpful to us.
And that's great. I'm really glad it is. And about the CWPP, this is a community wildfire protection plan, and you guys are the community. So we don't get the community unless the community comes to us, right? So please let us know what you want in that CWPP, what your thoughts are about it. As we start moving forward on prioritization procedures and processes, we want your input in this project. This is a community wildfire protection plan. And I think that's really important. So I really want to encourage that. And also for any of you who are in our project areas, one of the things that I'm really wanting to do is reach out and do more on the ground presentations in neighborhoods or with neighborhood groups. Priscilla, I have an email that's been sitting in my draft folder for you for the last 2 weeks to talk to you about the Fitch picnic. I know that's coming up on the 4th, right? So, okay, I'll send you that email and we can talk. But yeah, the more we can meet with folks to talk about the program, the better.
Yeah.
And Caerleon will also be helping our FireWise communities input their action plan projects into the portal too. So that will
awesome.
help close the loop. So thank you so much for walking us through that today. That was very, very helpful.
As much as I could.
Yeah, no, it was great.
Yeah. All right, that was great. Appreciate it. Thanks everyone for coming and taking a look at our speaker series this month. And then again, next month, we're going to have Merlin. He's an arborist. I think that's going to be very interesting. Thank you, Caerleon, for all this information and joining us today. Really appreciate it. Yeah, so yeah, and of course, special thanks to Mason and Marika for helping make this possible. So anyway, we'll see you guys next month. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Caerleon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks, everybody.
Totally.
Great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.